The Mill Series is a speaker series dedicated to promoting intellectual diversity at Lafayette College. The series is named after 19th century British thinker John Stuart Mill, whose arguments for the free exchange of ideas, even today, are unmatched. The Mill Series method is simple. We ask interesting thinkers from inside and outside the academy to come to Lafayette and present intelligent arguments that run counter to mainstream campus opinion. Our goal is not to promote a particular viewpoint, but to expose Lafayette students to as wide a range of reasonable viewpoints as possible so that they can develop their intellects and perhaps a newfound appreciation for perspectives not their own. Thanks to the generosity of our alumni donors, we managed to bring some remarkable speakers to Lafayette in the 2017-2018 academic year, including Jordan Peterson, Camille Paglia, Mark Lilla, Douglas Murray, Lucia Martinez, and Nigel Farage. Canadian psychologist and professor Jordan Peterson spent 3 hours with us and fielded all manner of questions. Here, Peterson explains his reaction to the introduction and passage of Bill C-16, Canadian civil legislation that, according to Peterson, legally compels speech for the first time in the history of British common law.
I thought, okay, well, let's assume the worst case scenario, and the worst case scenario would be that a student would report me to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and then they would do an investigation. Then they would find me guilty because the Ontario Human Rights Commission finds 99% of the people brought to it guilty because that's what totalitarians do. And then I would refuse to pay the fine or cooperate with whatever the re-education they would put me through would be. And then that would move to civil court, and then I would be fined for contempt, and then it would, then the whole legal catastrophe would unfold. And I thought, well, I could either do that or I could allow the government to regulate my speech. It's like, nope, that's not happening. So you might think about that as confrontational. And it is confrontational. It's like, there isn't a goddamn thing that can be done to me to make me allow the government to compel my speech. That's not happening.
American academic and social critic Camille Paglia spent more than 3 hours with us, delivering a presentation on gender in ancient art and taking questions from the audience. During the Q&A, she argued that men and women in the Western upper middle classes should be more grateful for the age-old contributions of working-class men.
It's men who are maintaining the infrastructure. It's men who are operating those cranes. It's men who are up there washing the windows, okay, at the 20th floor, installing the panes of glass, and so on. And I'm sick and tired, okay, of the parasitism, okay, of the upper middle class, both male and female, which fails to notice, okay, how many benefits are flowing from the age-old labor and risk-taking of men.
American professor of English Lucia Martinez spent nearly 2 hours with us, discussing her experiences at Reed College in Oregon. Early in her talk, she emotionally recounted the hostile treatment that Kimberly Pierce, writer and director of the 1999 film Boys Don't Cry, received during a talk at Reed. Students
protested a lecture and screening by Kimberly Pierce, who is the woman who wrote Boys Don't Cry. And she's the writer-director of that movie, which, if you haven't seen it, absolutely see it. But Pierce herself is a gender nonconforming butch lesbian. The movie is about the sort of trials and tribulations of a trans person growing up in the Midwest in the 1980s. And it is a tragedy. And students protested Pierce on the grounds that she was, quote, a transphobic cis, am I allowed to curse?
Sure.
Bitch, and telling her to fuck off. And they plastered the auditorium in signs prior to her lecture and shouted things at her of that nature until she actually left. This is a woman who's done an incredible amount of work for, sorry, it gets frustrating, for the LGBT community.
British author Douglas Murray spent over 2 hours with us, summarizing the thesis of his book, The Strange Death of Europe, and taking questions. Toward the end of his visit, he argued that immigration to Europe is only desirable provided that changing demographics do not irrevocably alter European culture and values.
You have to know what is available to be lost in order to want to preserve it. And what I think is at threat is not just the political liberalism in the real sense, but the culture which produced it. If you asked me to think of what, for me, defined Europe, I would not think of any Bill of Rights or legal statute or anything else. I would think of Venice, St. Peter's in Rome, the Vatican, the Louvre. I could go on all night. Bach, Dante, Goethe, Voltaire, and on it goes. But in a way, we are worried about arguing that. The only way out is to say this happens to be our inheritance, of which we're very grateful. And if you would like to have it as well and be part of it, then you're welcome to join us. But we would like to keep it, if you wouldn't mind awfully.
And finally, British businessman, politician, and the architect of Brexit, Nigel Farage, sat down for a 25-minute interview with the Mill series founders. This is Farage arguing that, contrary to what many think, Brexit will make Britain more globally relevant, not less so.
At the moment, when the World Trade Organization meet to discuss trade, we have to leave the room. World's 5th biggest economy. Now, cheerio, chaps. You can't be in here. Only the big boys are in here. Why? We've surrendered the ability to make trade policy to an unelected bunch of bureaucrats in Brussels. How's that elevating us on the world stage? Had we stayed part of the European Union, one of their stated intentions was to take away from individual member states their seat on the UN Security Council. So we'd have been replaced by, goodness knows who'd failed domestically in politics. Somewhere have been appointed as a commissioner. Actually, as a member of the European Union, you have no relevance in the world because you have no voice.
Okay, thanks for watching. These were just a few highlights from our 2017-2018 academic year. We're still putting together our program for the 2018-2019 academic year, but in September, philosophy professor Stephen Hicks will be coming to discuss his book Explaining Postmodernism, and in October, 2 professors of political science, Matthew Koenig and Andrew Coe, will be coming to discuss whether Trump should have pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. You can check us out on Facebook or Twitter, and if you'd like to see our website or send us an email, see below. We look forward to seeing you in the fall.